As part of Legacy Land Trust Society's Water Quality in You 2.0 outreach program, an interview was conducted featuring Jim Smith. Jim and his wife Hazel have donated a conservation easement on their land along the Little Red Deer River as part of their ongoing stewardship of and dedication to the preservation of the natural world. Along with being the founding volunteer chair of Legacy Land Trust, Jim has been involved with conservation initiatives most of his career. He was awarded the Order of the Bighorn in 2021 in recognition for his exceptional volunteer efforts regarding conservation. Over the course of this video, you will hear about his land, the reasons why a conservation easement was placed upon it, and the value that land can provide to society through the arts. The first question we had was just a brief history of your property, when you purchased it, where you are, and what its primary use is.
I think we purchased it nearly 40 years ago. I think it was in maybe about 1987. And it's located northwest of Olds in the county of Mountain View on the Little Red Deer River. And they bought it as a base for our growing little family and as a small farm. I had grown up on farm and I wanted to give my boys the opportunity to learn a little bit about agriculture and environment. It was a mixed farm. We raised cattle and hay and sometimes barley. And in later years, I've also planted quite a lot of fruit trees. Tried to practice sustainable grazing and did a lot of proactive work to manage for nature.
When did you decide that putting your land into a land trust was what you wanted to do?
I've been researching voluntary private land conservation ideas really for years, and pretty much managed our land on a basis that it should be maybe conserved, while concurrently being able to enjoy some agricultural production from it. Fenced off a lot of steep areas to keep the livestock off for erosion, and did a lot of riparian fencing to keep them off river and off-site watering. And so implemented a lot of those things pretty much off the get-go, and created some cell grazing to optimize the forage because it was a small land base. Did some winter grazing in part to do a better job of handling manure production, of keeping healthy stock. Kind of those combination of things has formed a bit of a basis for moving forward with the idea of formally conserving it at some point. I think probably 5 or 6 years ago, we officially entered into a conservation agreement with the Legacy Land Trust Society, but it had taken a couple of years prior to that to thinking about it and talking to the family about different ideas, and everybody was supportive of it. And so I think it was about 5 years ago we formalized that agreement with Legacy. It essentially didn't change things an awful lot. It more or less formalized the way I had been managing it, and just so regardless down the road who might own it, those kind of management principles will remain in place.
Because of your management practices, have you noticed a change in the river from when you purchased your property to now?
This is a short piece of river, so the area that I was able to influence certainly has flourished where it's been able to. On the other side of the equation, however, we've had 2 or 3 flood events that have erased a lot of that work and blown out trees, blown out fences, and created a situation where we got to kind of start over on in some regards. But the pieces that were intact, they're thriving, surviving, and flourishing. But now for the bigger question, when we first came here, we would take a canoe run once in a while, and the river was really nice and clear, and we'd see an abundance of freshwater clams, which surprised me. I hadn't seen that before. But unfortunately, over the years, notwithstanding our proactive practices along our little stretch of the river, unfortunately, the river hasn't fared quite as well as we might have liked, in that there's a greater amount of weediness. I mentioned some flood events, so because of some land use practices upstream, probably there's less to hold some of those floodwaters back, and so we've had a couple of major flood events that have changed our river valley a bit. So overall, yes and no. The parts that have been able to respond to some of the practices we've implemented have benefited from that. There's been no erosion from our operations into the river, but it's seen the effect of of some upstream activity that I can do nothing about. Some of the areas along the river that, given an opportunity, nature picks up that opportunity and does pretty well on it.
Do you have any stories of conservation success focusing on the river or the land around it?
Only seen some bird species that hadn't seen previously, and greater abundance of some species that we think are favorable. As for example, we've had the gray catbird, which isn't very common, I think, around here, but we've had them nesting down near the river for probably, I'd say, 7 or 8 years now, which is, they're kind of a neat species. We had a little spotted sandpiper makes his home down another stretch of the river, and we have quite a collection of birds that not only pass through but also live here. And I think that they seem to respond well to the management practices along the river here. And I know that we have some mammals that occur here in some reasonable abundance, and have kind of done some management to foster some of that. We've seen some wildflowers and things like blue-eyed grass that I hadn't seen. Yeah, so it's nice to see some of that diversity starting to sneak into some of those areas.
You have hosted the Paint, Pen, and Pixels event 2 times now. What inspired you to open up your land to artists and photographers and writers?
I've often felt that there's a pretty strong link between art and the things it does for society and nature. And very often the artists are the purveyor of some of those stories, whether they're good, bad, or otherwise. And I wound up reading an article some time ago that did just a fabulous job of conveying the thought that art and nature are pretty much inextricably linked, and what a great way to give people an opportunity to access nature is via art. And so I just felt it would be a pleasant thing for people to be given an opportunity to get their feet on the ground.
Legacy Land Trust Society would like to thank Jim and Hazel Smith and their family for donating a conservation easement on their land and for conducting this interview. This video has been part of the Water Quality and You 2.0 outreach program. Legacy hopes that future conservation easement donors can be inspired by the Smith family's story, their dedication to conservation, and their passion for nature.